back, everyone. In today's episode of Car Talk, we're going to be talking about what it's like to buy a Porsche 911. 911s are great milestone cars to acquire, but often comes with a lot of stress. The whole buying process isn't straightforward. There's a lot of complexities behind it. So in this one, let's talk about why that is. To help us with this conversation, we have Eric and Jeff. Jeff, thank you for making this podcast. You're in New York just yesterday? Hours ago. That's like travel man right here, eh?
Fresh off the plane.
Yes.
Literally. So Eric and I, we've owned Porsches in the past.
Yeah.
And we own Porsches now. And Jeff has been on this journey of hunting for a Porsche 911. And it's good to have him on this conversation as well, just to get a potential buyer's perspective as well on the complexities behind it and the pros or some of the positives that's behind it as well. So thank you for joining the conversation.
No problem.
Welcome back. Lucas can't make it this time. He's in Toronto somewhere.
Yeah, not committed. Not committed. That's
yeah, you're 5 for 5.
I am just thrilled to be here next to Car Stories episode 1. Yeah. The legend himself.
Yeah, well, thank you. I actually thought you were Lucas because you have an F80 M3. I can't tell you guys apart. Until the intro, I didn't know.
Well, mine's red. His is blue.
Oh wait,
that's how I tell you guys apart.
Yeah,
you didn't know he's colorblind.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So you'll have to edit this part out.
Yeah. But I thought this time around we can dive right into the topic. Right. But before we get into some of the stressful experiences, perhaps we can start off with the positives. You know, what is it about a Porsche 911 that drives us towards it? What's so special about it that makes us goo goo gaga over it? What's your take? Do you want to kick us off, maybe?
Well, yeah. Maybe, why don't I go first? I like the word you use, Milestone, because I really think, it was a poster car growing up. You can think about a bunch of movies like No Man's Land and things like that, where you saw the iconic 911s, and one day I would just dream to have owned one, and now I'm on my second one. I think it's, and I've said this before, I think on Car Stories episode 1, it's this blend of performance and practicality. Yeah. It's it's exclusive in a way. Not everyone has one, which is kind of nice. Yet it has a usability that you don't get in some exotic and supercar type. And you can kind of, there's obscurity to it. You can kind of blend in, take it to the grocery store, run your errands, and get away without too much, spectacle.
I mean, you've got so many variants of the 911s as well, right? So,
yeah.
We can dive into some of that a little later as well. How about you? Like, what makes you sort of want to get a 911?
Well, I think Eric was talking about what he was talking about in his Car Stories episode. And I remember touching on sort of Porsche ownership in the episode that we did together.
Jeff, it's Porsche. You're going to get corrected in the comments. It's very, very snooty bunch.
Porsche.
But I have to say that ever since that first episode of Car Talk we did, you guys have not been saying it correctly.
I know.
And everyone's probably going, why
so
we bother?
To set the record straight, it is Porsche.
Porsche.
Yeah.
Okay. So when we talked about it first, Porsche was never really on my radar. And that's really not fair. I mean, I used to really like the Panamera. When the Panamera first came out.
Really?
Yes. I said, this is a car I can see myself raising a family in.
Wow. And
the closest I got to driving one was we were going on a cruise in Miami, and my wife had rented one through one of the luxury rentals down there. And then we got the bill and we saw how much they were charging per mile. So the rental itself was $700 for 2 or 3 days. Mm-hmm. And then after your first 50 miles, it was $1 something per mile. And we realized we're going to probably put 200 or 300 miles on this car while we were down there. So the rental, the dollars and cents didn't really add up. But so I did have a thing for Porsche back then, but I think where it's evolved is getting into an F80 M3. Mm-hmm. On every forum, when you talk to the majority of other owners, the next logical step in car is a 911. and it just seems to come with the conversation.
Yeah.
You know, what are you going to get next? What's after this? What are you working towards? And the 911 comes up in probably 90% of the conversations, and that's sort of what drove my interest in it. And I started reading it, and I totally agree with Eric. It's got this exclusiveness where you can't just walk in anywhere and grab one. So there's this pride of ownership when you have one in your garage or your driveway. But it's a completely capable car of tearing up the whinies and twisties, but you can throw a couple of bags in for the weekend and take a weekend trip. So it's got a lot of utility to it as well, which I really liked about the F80. It is a very capable sports car that you can take a weekend trip in, which I've done a couple of times and I've thoroughly enjoyed it. So those, in my quest for the next car, it's become important piece, or the functionality of the car has to be there too.
Yeah.
You were the first person that I've ever heard talk about like the gateway into the Porsche brand being the Panamera. It's often the car that someone, gets because they have a 911, they want to continue, keep their garage consistent. I'm not a fan of the Panamera, so that's kind of surprising, but I do agree with you. It seems like all the evolution of car, ownership converges on Porsche. We had a conversation about our friend who's going from an NSX, into a Porsche and F80 M3. You read it all over the forums that people, even get out of Ferrari sometimes and get into Porsche.
Yeah, I mean, I think the exclusivity aspect of it is what makes it also hold value. And that's the other aspect of owning a Porsche 911. If you get the right 911, it can in some ways be an investment as well. And I think a lot of people look for that as well, right? Like when I was looking at my first 911, I didn't even know what I was getting into, right? I got the 911 GTS. I didn't know what the GTS was. When I went to the showroom, saw it there, I just fell in love with it and I said, I want it. Let's figure out how to make this work. And it's after the fact that I realized, oh my God, I have a 911 GTS and I didn't pay a whole lot of money for it.
Rear-wheel drive 997.2.
Yeah.
A real gem.
Yeah.
Sorry,
yeah, let's not
take
go
a moment.
So, I mean, as much as I miss that car or whatnot, but it was sort of an accidental buy. And my previous car was a BMW Z4 that I was trying to replace, right? So I never had these thoughts of what's my progression like. I just wanted a raw driver's car that was manual, that will give me that driving thrill, but had all of that practicality as well.
Yeah.
Back seats, having the front to carry luggages and all those things. Those are the things that sort of gravitated towards me. Now, forward a few years, that whole buying experience and the various variables you look at, totally different.
We bought ours in a completely different time and place. Like the market was different. I mean, they were a little bit of wiggle room when I bought mine, but now you pay MSRP and you're happy to do so. But you're going to share experiences, I'm sure, at some point about you can't even get the options you want now. They tell you what car you can order in a way.
I mean, we can get into that when we talk about some of the I guess the negatives or the stressful aspects of the buying experience, right?
Yeah.
I mean, would you guys conclude that those are some of the key things around the positive side of why we want a 911, and how far would you go to acquiring one?
Well, I know for me, I constantly have a psychological battle where I'm asking myself, do I really want the car, or am I doing it for the clout of owning a Porsche? Is it the influence of, the friends that I have around me that are in the hobby? There's a lot of psychological pieces to it.
Peer pressure.
There you go.
It's a wonderful drug.
Yes, it is. So, I because I'm a prospective buyer, I still have the pull of controlling spending my money where I feel it's reasonable. And when I see a car that I really like and I'm able to sort of apply value to it, and when you're kind of looking around and Auto Trader or Bring a Trailer, whatever you've got, and you see people paying $80,000, $90,000, $100,000 US. So you translate that to Canadian, and we're talking $150,000 over the defined market value of that vehicle. It's really tough to swallow.
Yeah.
But then you see your friends having a blast with it and literally saying there is no replacing that driving experience, and you can't put a price tag to that.
What's the saying? There's no substitute. That's like
Yeah.
the Porsche saying.
Yeah. But I think you're right, Jeff. I mean, it's certainly not a need. You use the word want. I think you're right to be patient. I think the market paradigm is going to shift. So, I know we'll get into like, what that looks like for you to buy, but I think take your time, find the one that's right for you. And
Yeah.
when you're thinking about a 911, I mean, the first question you might ask is which generation?
Yeah.
Right? Like, is it the Porsche options list is you could probably talk 3 hours on that, but like even starting the search to narrow, which is it 997? Is it 991?
So the 992 generation, so the most recent generation, I really am drawn to. I'm drawn to just the subtlety of the
Megan's 911.
Yeah, I think that it's, I sort of don't know where in the design language the 992 is. Is it? I don't know if it's the most aggressive of the generations or the generation that tried to make it more accessible, but the dimensions, the ratios of everything really speak to me.
I think in terms of the generation that's most accessible, I think it's the generation that's the least accessible,
Right,
due to market conditions today.
Right.
But what I think is really good about the 992, it's 75 years of evolution.
Yeah.
Of the Porsche 911 brand that's put into the 992. The driving experience is like none other, right? The engine's all the way at the back. It's over the rear axle.
But you'd say that about all the generations,
Yeah.
right? I think there was that Jalopnik article that it sort of cataloged and stack ranked all the generations, and the 992 actually fared very well.
Yeah.
I think in that. I think it was even better than the 991 if I recall.
I think the 991s oddly has aged really poorly in my eyes.
Yep.
Unless you're getting a GT3, that ages really well. But if you're looking at a 911, Carrera 2, Carrera S, Carrera 4S, even the turbos, they just feel aged so much faster than the newer generation 992, and we'll see how it pairs. For me, a 997 turbo looks a little bit better than a 991 Turbo S.
I think it'd be the scale of the car, right? The 997 is very, it's smaller.
Mm-hmm.
You get the more flared out hips as a result. I think the 991 was viewed, and especially following the 997, it seemed like an awfully big car.
Yeah. I mean, 992 is a bigger car, so the rear seats are a lot more functional.
Yeah.
A lot more space for the kids to use it. It's almost as big as my RS5 rear space, right? So from that, it's practical.
Mm-hmm. I like a big car though. It's
coming from an F80, you're not.
Yeah, case in point why I opted for an F80 M3 versus an F82. Same car, one could be arguably more nimble than the other, or considered more of a sports car than the other. But I like the dimensions of a car that show presence when you're in the lane.
Yeah.
And the 992 has that, when I see its presence in a lane on a highway, it's undoubtedly something special coming down the road.
So should we dive into what makes it so stressful?
Sure.
Well, I have a question for both of you being owners of arguably dream spec 911s to the community out there. So there's that old adage that says never meet your heroes.
Yeah.
Is this true now that you're driving very, very, very special cars?
You go first.
Well, I think I had my car for so long, and I never take it for granted. But I would say modifying it has renewed that love, to put it that way. Not that it wasn't special to me before, but I think the car is the best version of itself with, a proper suspension, proper fitment on the wheels.
Not off-roading the way he was before.
Right. So
you had a Dakar.
Yeah, it was it was the early prototype of the Dakar. It's all-wheel drive. It's great in the sand. But yeah, no, it's exceeded my expectations. I still love it. When I drive it, it puts a smile on my face. No, there's very, very few things I don't love about it.
Yeah. Yeah. In a way, it's similar. But the thing is, as you own something for so long, you end up wanting something you don't have.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the trap I've fallen into with all the car trades I've done. And every time I've traded them, I look back and go, man, I should have kept it. If I had infinite amount of money, I wouldn't sell them. I would keep them.
Do you think the day comes when you get rid of the GT3 RS that you might look back and say,
yeah,
okay, I regret that?
I mean, this is maybe the aspect we touch on the market. A GT3 RS, who knows what 5 years will bring for that car, right? It's an appreciating asset right now. It feels like, right? It's making money. If I sell it, because the market is tanking or it's being uncertain, does that mean the next 5 years is going to be the same way? I could dump it now and then regret it later when the car is over. And I could keep it and I could still regret it in 5 years because the car tanked. It's hard to predict, but I am trying my best to keep the 911s that I acquire as much as possible if finances will support it. If not, whatever, moving on.
I think in time, though, that mindset, like, you'll be proven correct in terms of it being appreciating. Like, name one vintage special car, like in the current context of the day or today, that isn't worth more. Like, I can't think of one that isn't worth more than it was when it rolled off the line.
I mean, if you think about it, right, like, what percentage of the 911s are still on the road? There's a pretty high percentage, 70% of the cars or something are still on the road today.
No
right?
kidding.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So that's why there's a lot of classic parts. There's a lot of retrofit options from Porsche itself.
Yeah, once it's in the classic program, Porsche will commit to always supplying parts for it. So if you own, like, my car is a 997.2, so it's 2012, I can... 5 years from now, if I need a high pressure fuel pump, I can get it from Porsche.
Wow.
The value of these cars increase in time as well.
Yeah, that's the point I was making.
Yeah. That's
cool. I know some people, I call it an asset class. I really think if you buy it right, it can perform just like any other asset class and a good store of value.
Yeah.
I know some people, cars aren't investments, and if you put it in an S&P index, okay, I get it. But, it feels great when we all take the garbage out on a Thursday night and look and see our beautiful cars there. And obviously we enjoy them. It's a great sense of community. We know each other through cars that I just don't think I get from my ETFs or mutual funds, right?
Yeah. I mean, unless there's a marketplace and a meeting place for those ETF folks to hang out and talk ETF.
It's called Wall Street. Yeah. It's there. Jeff was just there this morning. Yeah.
I mean, at the same time, so number one, I never thought I would live in a lifetime where an automobile would be considered an appreciating asset. I'm almost 20 years into finance. Eric's got about 86 years in finance now.
I started when I was minus 20.
92 never looked so good. But we've been brought up always knowing that you take down a car as a liability when you're putting someone's balance sheet together.
Yeah, sure. It's a depreciating asset.
Yeah. Even when sort of calculating affordability, you look at it like a liability versus an asset. So never in my wildest dreams did I think, outside of something like, a one of one Ferrari or a concept car that you were able to purchase, or a very limited edition car, that I think that cars in general were going to become appreciating assets. So I think sort of what I've observed being a potential buyer is it has made the market drastically more difficult, because now you're not only competing against other buyers like yourself who want to take that step, and enthusiasts and sort of first-time buyers who are, ready and financially capable of doing it. But now we're competing against a group of buyers who are doing it strictly for the investment side.
Yeah, 100%.
You know, so I'll pick up an allocation, or I'll put, and we've seen some crazy activity even on social media where people are looking to sell their allocations online for a premium.
We had a conversation. It was when the GT3 RS was announced. There was a dealership in the GTA that was offering the allocation, and probably it was like 300,000 over the MSRP cost.
Double the price of the car.
Right.
It was like,
it was unsafe. Like there's definitely an unsavory practice, and the ad was immediately taken down.
Yeah.
I think I even got Porsche Canada to reach out to me. I don't know if I think I did tell you that.
Oh, did they? Yeah. There you go.
Yeah, I've heard of those funny stories of show up with a brand new Submariner on my desk, and I'll move you up the list, no problem. Or
let me use your cottage in wherever, Muskoka, or your Florida winter home.
Keep going.
The one thing I would say, you're right. That was the paradigm 40 years. It had to be a one of one, and like I still think you can do well by looking out for limited edition cars, but especially in the Porsche world, options matter.
Yeah.
Right. Like it doesn't have to be a one of one, but if you have a 997.1 turbo with PCCBs and it's 6-speed, you've got a moneymaker. Like that car is going to be worth more in 10 years than it is today.
It is right now.
Right.
Already $100,000 more as soon as you got it. I mean, again, today's situation puts it in that place. It didn't have to wait 10 years to see those gains. But that's all part of this whole buying experience that makes it stressful for someone that's new coming in and saying, hey, I really want that GT3. Well, you can't have it. You can't get that allocation because there's only so many available.
And we need you to buy 4 cars from us. And here's the program over the next 3-4 years. We'll get you prepared to buy get a GT3 allocation by buying
4 Porsches.
Yeah.
4 911s.
Macan 4-cylinder. We'll start you with that. Yeah. Then we'll work you up to the Panamera.
Hey, there's a trajectory. There's a roadmap laid out for you.
And then we'll get you to a turbo, a 911 turbo. And then you'll get the call.
And I feel bad for people I'm not sure if it's the same here in Canada too, but the dealer markups as well, right? To get a GT3 or a GT4 RS or Turbo S, there are dealer markups that you have to go. Some go up to $100,000.
And how do they skirt this? So I fully understand this. I think what they do is they will have a loyal customer of theirs that works with them on this, and they'll grant them the allocation. That customer will immediately flip the car over to them. Yeah. I've had someone that works for me got offered for a C8 in the same C8 Corvette, and it was about $15,000 to give it back to the dealership, so they could put it on their lot for $40,000. I don't know what the amount was, 40 or 50,000 more, because that was the market on them. That is in today's context. What happens though, because that wasn't the way it was 10 years ago.
I don't know. I think
it was the way it was for like to buy a LaFerrari.
Yeah.
Or to get a 918 Spider. Yes, you had to be and that made sense, right?
Yeah.
Why would they reward me being a one-time Porsche owner at that point versus the person that's bought a new car for them every year for the last 10 years? That is the person that should get the 918 Spider, right?
I think the population that loses the most is the enthusiast population.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And I think that you have the pure capitalists, which see it as an opportunity to make money, and that's going to exist no matter where you go. And to be fair, I don't disagree with that methodology. It is what it is. But it's when the contagion spreads to sort of the entry level stuff. Now this is where it's creating an ecosystem that is impossible to break into. So like my only conversation with a Porsche dealer so far has been, this is what I would like. And they're like, okay, well, we've got this base model Cayman over here. Why don't you buy that? I said, but I don't want it. It's automatic. It's in a color I don't want. And it's literally missing 80% of things what I want.
Yeah.
Right. And the conversation literally went, well, if you buy this one, we'll put you on a list that when an allocation comes up, we can talk. And I said, well, what is that going to be? 3, 4, 5, 6 years from now? I don't know. Can't really tell you. Yeah. But at least if you buy this one,
You have a car.
you have a car.
You will gain our favor.
Right.
Now kiss my ring and get out of the dealership.
Right. And then, as the conversation sort of moves on, they said, okay, so that one right there? Well, no, not that one right there. We have another one coming 8 months from now. And a part of that is we need to take your car that you have right now. So I'm going to be carless for 8 months, and I'm going to buy a car that I don't want just to get into the conversation. Like it's
a one-sided contract.
It's a one-sided contract for sure.
Yeah.
Now, I absolutely understand that when it comes to purchasing a 911, there's no such thing as, can you throw in a set of tires or cut me $5,000 off, or what? It's going to be what it's going to be. But I think a lot of us enthusiasts have made peace with that already. And we've had to start planning into the future to say, we're going to be spending top dollar. And if I'm going to be spending top dollar, I want to get something that I want.
Yes.
And I'm willing now to wait 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years to get what I want.
And it's crazy. For some, they don't even get the car they want. They skip generations of these cars before they get it. There's been, I've heard a story of a person waiting for a GT3. They waited 3 generations of GT3s till they got the GT3.
Right.
They wanted.
Are we missing, like, why wouldn't you just buy used? Why go, like, you might pay the market rate. It's fine. But I see you can get a 992 GT3 used.
There is a big supply of them right now. But they're still like $100,000 over, 80 to 100,000 over.
But like, GT3. There's a time value of money, and you don't want to wait 10 years. And it costs more because that's what the market says. So unless you think, overlay some economic, catastrophe or something happens, it's probably going to be worth more you paid for it. And for me, that's the delta I care most about. Like, if I pay $100,000, that's fine. I pay $100,000 more.
Yeah.
As long as when I sell it 5 years from now, I'm still up.
The way I had thought about it was, hey, Porsche 911s, here's a car that I can own and not lose a whole lot of money because I can justify it with my wife, so I can go spend the $200,000 and tell her that it is a bit of an investment and that I won't be losing a ton of money, like 20, 30, 40 grand or whatever, right? So when you look at these 911s and you're trying to buy it, you're trying to minimize that risk.
Right.
And so when you go off and buy a car that's over $100,000, you have no idea if the market's going to tank, and you're going to lose that $100,000, and how long you have to wait before you realize that back again.
So this is how you, that's a fair concern, but this is how you de-risk in that moment. You make sure it has PCCBs and buckets. And if it's PTS, that is a sweet bonus.
Yeah.
I think that's a guaranteed formula for success. And give yourself time. As with any investment, the time horizon matters. I don't think you'll lose.
But how long before, right?
You shouldn't be made if you need to be liquid in a year and a half after. Just don't buy the car. But if you've got a 5 to 10 year horizon investment, you're fine. Like, you'll be fine on a car like that.
Here's the difference between me and
that's
you.
That's an
right
Thor
now.
guarantee. Write that down.
You might not see that's my thing too. I'm super impatient, right? Part of my personality is the now. I want the car now. And if something new and shiny comes, I want that car. And I'm always...
But haven't you learned, haven't you reflected that you lament the loss of the 997.2 GTS?
I am torn between these two people as a Porsche owner. One, I want that raw driving experience that I can keep for a long time, live old with it. And then the other side, I want the latest and greatest experience.
I have the solution. You just give Jeff and I power of attorney over all your affairs. We will make sure we do not steer you wrong.
Please talk to my wife.
She scares me. I won't do that.
You heard it. You have to start thinking without emotion, and that selling and buying process, and just do what's best. And I was selling emotionally, and for me, it was a bit stressful. Even buying my GT3 RS, I called every single dealership in town.
I remember.
Researched every single car that they had, and I ended up picking the car that I thought was best for what I wanted. And even getting it for MSRP was a bit of a hurdle. Like, so I got lucky when I got the car for MSRP.
But to be honest, they might have worked that because you traded in.
Yeah.
They might have given you less.
I know I got less for
than
my GTS for sure.
Right.
But that's what happens, right? I mean, I think it's true for any car sales, but it's amplified even more with these Porsche GT cars, I'd say. You just have to be a good, savvy business person or, cutthroat, opportunist to be able to keep doing this on a regular basis. And I'm not. I don't think you cutthroat.
I think you just have to abandon sort of care on something. Like some people do this without any stress, but they accept that they're probably overpaying, maybe not optimizing, and it all works out. And they probably build a very good relationship with their dealership along the way, right? Because this is the person that's not going to beat me up on price, not going to give me a hassle in what I give them on trade, and we'll sell 5 cars to them over 5 years and make a ton of money off them.
Yeah, and this is the kind of relationship I want to build with our local dealership as well, right? I know it's going to take time. I might be 60 and retired by the time I have the relationship I'm looking for. Who knows? I don't know. But I want to build that trajectory with the local dealership to attain
Jeff,
that sort of trust.
As a Porsche outsider, like, does this not seem, is there any part of you that hears this and says, this is insane? Like, I have money and I'm willing to give it to you for a product, but you're making me develop a 15-year relationship to it. The question was for Jeff. Go ahead, Jeff.
None of it sounds insane.
Okay.
It sounds I think the word that Preb will use that resonates, it's very opportunistic. So I think that it is
for who though? For the dealer?
For Porsche.
Yeah. Okay.
I think that if you were to do a forensic investigation into sort of how the brand has strengthened over the last, I mean, was it just less than 20 years ago that Porsche was facing bankruptcy?
Yeah.
This is not
before the advent of the 996 and the Cayenne.
Right. Those were the cars that brought the Boxster,
sort of saved them.
Sort of saved the brand.
Saved them,
So I think if you do working for a big corporation, I know there are highly, highly, highly emotionally intelligent people embedded in the executive structure of companies. And I think that seeing this opportunity to create demand, create almost a cult following where people will do unreasonable things just to be loyal to your brand. Yeah. You can factor in sort of an incentive structure through the dealership network where it's in their benefit to promote this type of activity. That even, when I compare it to other things like watch buying, like the black market is sort of, you're never going to control the black market. It's impossible. You cannot prevent Prabul from privately selling his car to you for whatever value he wants.
That's not a black market. That's just a
resale market. Sorry,
yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So resale, people aren't selling fake Porsches.
Maybe in an alley, you got cash.
Yeah. Do you have a GT3 RS?
Yeah, but you never control the resale market. But they have done such a good job of controlling the ecosystem that it seems like even they control the resale market.
I agree with a lot of what you're saying, but I would just substitute manufacturer with the dealership network, because the manufacturer is not getting that money, right? It's the dealerships that are, borrowing a cottage, give me a Submariner on my desk. The manufacturer, if they were really capitalizing this, their prices would be more expensive. The market is showing that someone will pay $300,000 for a GT3 992. Why are they not raising prices and
think that
taking
would harm
the dealership out of the?
Would the risk of harming the brand be too great in that scenario? You think?
And
What's the harm to the brand?
The existing market would explode if they readjusted prices for what the market prices are. The resale market for the 911s would be like every other.
Okay, how I fail to see that word harm apply to my car being worth suddenly $50,000 more overnight. Where's the harm? right?
Your car wouldn't be over.
Well, it's
I'm talking about
all
a new
boats
car.
all
Yeah,
boats
yeah.
rise, right? Like I'm thinking.
But if they did that, I think they
But the
knowingly sell
market-
it for undervalue, knowing that it is like an exotic watch that gets traded for X amount of dollar because the people start to see that there is value in it. So they want people to come into this ecosystem that you're talking about, where it's not about just buying the car. It's an investment, if you want to think of it. If you don't crash it, it's an investment. You can make money off of it if you play it right. And I think they're playing that really tight. They don't want you. Sorry.
So you think Porsche's established their equilibrium price such that they leave margin or cushion
Exactly.
for other people to make more money on the car than they probably make?
It's a marketplace on its own.
Like,
Right?
let's think about that. More money than they make on a car.
But they've made enough profits to be satisfied, right? And they're moving on.
I don't think any for-profit
But it,
capitalistic organization
It's
thinks that way,
Yeah.
where we want to leave so much on the table that a secondary market can come in, be it dealerships, be it curbsiders that can come in and make more money on the car than we do.
so brand new, they control what the cars are sold for.
Right.
In Canada, you can't do the dealer markups. In US, I don't know how they get around this, but Porsche penalizes dealerships that charges a premium on brand new cars. Used cars, no holds barred. Do whatever the heck you want. Porsche doesn't control that.
Right, but that is the workaround, right? We find a really loyal customer that does this one for us, and we'll put it back in the dealership. These cars are in the dealership, listed at market price with 700 miles on them, right?
Yeah.
I think there's an inefficiency of the market that the manufacturer probably would like to earn, get more of that money.
But I think they make money on the leasing, the financing, all the stuff that they do prior to it going back into the used car market, even the lease buyout, right? I think
What I would agree to probably in this conversation is that this is there's a recency thing to this. This isn't how the market's always been, or
Very
else
true.
they probably would adjust. I think it's just
Very true.
It's probably more incrementalism where they're not going to MSRP in a car one year isn't going to be 120 and the next year is going to be 220, right? I think they'll probably, that would not, the optics of that wouldn't be great. So that might be it,
Yeah.
but I don't know.
I mean, it's been the case for GT cars for the long time. But like you said, it's bleeding into non-GT cars as well. GTSs, 4Ss, just any entry-level 911. It's super hard to get. So now there is that demand for that space as well. And they're artificially creating. I wouldn't say it's artificially created. It is just the nature
No,
of
it's
the
the
supply
market.
chain today, right? So
Yeah, I think you've had like governments print a ton of money. There's the money supply has been increased. I think there's just people have money to spend on this stuff, and luxury goods have been hot. Jeff used the Rolex example. Like, good luck getting a Rolex from a dealer, right?
Yep. I mean, I've seen it firsthand walking into a flagship Rolex store in a major metropolitan city in the United States. Cash in hand, and they will refuse to sell you one.
yeah,
Right.
You literally say, here is
$50,000.
$15,000 US. It's right there. It's all legit. Will you sell me a watch? And they will say, very similar to Porsche, I'll sell you a watch. This entry level $8,000 Oyster Perpetual 38 millimeter watch that will fit on your 12-year-old daughter's wrist.
Yeah. And you have to buy all this other jewelry that you don't want to buy.
Right.
I think it's just the nature of the luxury, luxury goods market. It's just the nature of the luxury goods market. If you go in to buy a certain purse, Louis Vuitton or any of these like crazy brands that Kim talks about that are 50, 60 grand type purses, you don't just walk in and go buy a purse. You got to build a profile before you can get that. Same thing with the Rolexes as well, right? So I see the Porsche GTs or the 911s in general kind of in that sort of segment. You could say that with certain Lamborghinis, certain Ferraris, McLarens, and all those as well, like limited production run cars fall into that same category of how you play the game. I'm not good at it.
Yeah.
I wish I was.
I'm with you too. I'm awful at the game.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think when you finally wake up and you realize, like life isn't fair. It's not a game of if Porsche made their cars accessible to everyone, everyone would have one. And then you would have a mass produced car that everybody owns.
I agree.
You know, it's, you know, I can see viewers watching this podcast and be like, here's a bunch of guys complaining about having some money and
not being able to spend it.
And you know, and I would be lying if I said even as little as 5 years ago I felt the same way. But you realize that just life isn't a fair playing field. And you know, I if I was an executive of Porsche, I would feel very proud about the brand that I've built.
Yeah,
I've built a brand that is so. I mean, even you know, I had no idea about sort of that availability of parts when you know that is an incredible offering for any company to say.
Yeah.
If you, as long as you stay loyal to our product, we are going to make sure that you have every possible way to keep your car on the road. That is an incredible offering.
I completely agree.
To have built this cult following, not even cult following, I would say.
I think that applies, right?
Yeah, this loyal but also non-loyal. You have, you know, you have a competitor. I'm in a competitor's product, and I'm already thinking about how I get out of my product into your product. Like you got to think about, you know, what's just the pride of ownership. You know, for any generation now. I mean, I've even been in parts, you know, in discussions with myself where, you know, do I just grab anything that I can grab just to say that I have one, you know? But then your own pride takes over, and you say you wouldn't feel good driving, you know, driving something like that. You know, there's your own ego that gets attached to it. But you know, I look in awe of the brand itself and how it's been able to pull itself out of almost bankruptcy within 20 years
ago,
and been able to build this level of strength in a global economy that's failing. And you still have people
they're still making profits.
And they're still making profits.
Even when the rest of the markets were sort of tanking.
Right.
For me, that's one of the reasons why I feel I have a strong affinity towards Porsche as well, because of that sort of longevity that I can have with the brand.
Mm-hmm. Right.
You know, in terms of the key things that I care about in an automotive, like the driving experience, engaging, it's you know, pedigree. No other brand can offer that for as long as it has been offering it. And I know for the foreseeable future, they're going to continue offering those core values and not take shortcuts.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like, you know, I went into the world of Audi. They've dropped enthusiast cars like the R8, for example, right? And that makes me sad because they're taking...
I'm learning that. Audi is no longer going to make the R8 going forward.
They're going to make it all electric.
Oh, all electric. Okay.
So at least Porsche is standing their ground and saying these cars need a life, especially with the numbers like 70, 60, whatever percent of the 911s are still on the road. They need that lifeline to kind of continue for them to sell new cars.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that they will come out on top with solutions that'll help maintain that core value. And I think Porsche is the only one that could potentially keep doing it.
Mm-hmm.
But who knows? Maybe BMW. They're still an enthusiast brand as well. But
I think BMW's lost their way a little bit. And,
some of the design. Yeah.
Design language and, you know, just sort of the electrification of BMW a little bit has kind of lost its way. But that's my opinion. You know, I think they'll find their way again, you know, but I completely agree that Porsche has remained the conviction of the brand to stay true. Like it is unbelievable when you see, you know it's a 911. Doesn't matter how old it is.
Yeah, it's timeless.
It's timeless. It is absolutely timeless.
So I think it's about time that we try to conclude on this topic as well. You know, we started off asking ourselves, why is it so stressful buying a Porsche? And we've covered a lot of things about the exclusivity nature of it, how these Porsche cars are so desirable. There's not as many cars or not enough supply, and there's so much demand. And the demand is being closely controlled by Porsche itself in terms of how they sell the cars and how they market them. Final thoughts before we end?
Yeah, you know, the one thing we didn't get into a little bit, I guess. You and I have had a lengthy conversation on some of the unsavory practices around that, and whether, you know, Jeff, would you how far would you be willing to go?
Mm-hmm.
Like, would you, if you could jump the line or to get on the top of the list as a prospective Porsche buyer, would you do that? Would you be willing to do that?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because the first word that comes into I was going to just respond very quickly, as long as it was ethical.
Yeah.
But it's completely unethical for me to do
Yeah,
that.
I don't know if it's illegal, but yeah, it's certainly not
It's
ethical.
not illegal, I wouldn't say.
Right.
But ethical nature, yeah, that can be very questionable.
And it's different based on who you talk to. It'll be different based on what government's in power in the year that I jumped this list. So I think, obviously I would have to, I would never want to sacrifice my own sort of morals and ethics to purchase a car. I don't think it holds that level of importance to me right now. But I don't, talk to me May 1st when the sun is shining and, probably goes racing past me on the highway, in that moment it might change.
Right. Well, in today's Canada, there are no ethics that can't be breached. I'll be in the inquiry for you. Don't worry. You can edit that part out.
And it's unfortunate. If you wanted to buy a Porsche 911 today, there are some compromises you have to make as well, right? For one, if you get an allocation, you might be lucky, or you've been waiting for a long time. Once you get the allocation, options, it's a hit or miss.
You could almost guarantee it's not going to be the spec that you want on
Right.
the configurator.
Right.
And it was really odd because when I posted up my GT4 RS build, a lot of people reached out and were like, "Hey, how did you get PCCBs?" And I was so proud and like, "Yeah, I managed to get it in before the freeze or whatever." And then only to realize, well, there's a stop sale on for carbon ceramic brakes.
Why is it just supply chain management issues?
Yeah.
Okay.
So there's only a certain there are quotas of these options assigned to certain models, right? So they have carbon ceramic brakes. They're essentially the same whether it's a 911 or GT3 RS or GT3 RS or GT4 RS, and they allocate certain number of these options for these cars. And when they deplete that for that 2023 model year, they stop. Mm-hmm. Now they're going to give that quota to the 2024 year.
I see.
And
so they become so overwhelmingly popular that a lot of people are ticking them. They run out in the parts bin.
yeah.
And okay.
So it's unfortunate because there's rumors of carbon bucket seats being limited as well. There's stop sales on them. So if you get an allocation, what do you do with all these limitations in place? Do you pass? Like to your point, do you get it because you really truly want it?
Mm-hmm.
But now you're making some compromises, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of the world of buying a brand new Porsche. As much as you might not like the used car market for its inflated prices and so on, brand new is not an easy thing.
Why pay full pop brand new on a car that you're making compromises on, that it also future value will be impacted if you don't want it?
Yeah, exactly.
Your future buyer, if you ever wanted to or needed to sell.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It sort of steadies my resolve that buying the used car that I want, paying a little extra, I think in the long run, I don't know, Jeff, I think that you'd be well served.
Yeah, and I will defer to my wife's good judgment when it comes to.
Let's bring her on the podcast.
Yeah.
Get
So,
Jen in
next
here.
one.
My wife has said when it comes to cars, spare no expense.
Whoa.
She said it does not matter if it costs $300,000, $400,000, doesn't matter. But when it shows up in the driveway, you have to love it. So if I have the opportunity to buy a Porsche and she's going to give me the latitude to do that, I am prepared to wait as long as it takes to
Did
get
she say
what
that
I
at
want.
your the wedding speech? It sounds beautiful. I'm gonna cry.
Can your wife talk to my wife?
Absolutely, she can. But because she understands. I think she truly understands the passion, and she truly understands the. She's seen the relationships that the car community has built, and she's seen. One of our favorite things to do in the summer after work. We both work from home. Laptops get closed at 4:00. We jump into the car, windows get rolled down, and we just go and drive. And it's one of our, I know not every couple's going to have that same that same like. But that's one of the things that we've identified with for the last 15 years we've been together. We used to do it when we had no money, and that's the only thing we could afford to do was to get into the car and drive and get a Tim Hortons coffee and whatever. So she understands deeply that passion towards it. So she knows if you're going to spend, when we're talking about spending 200,000, 300, 400, we're just rubbing nickels together at this point. You're spending a good chunk of money. Yeah. And that's not an elitist thing to say. It's just, if you're going to be spending that level of money,
do it right.
Do it right. Yeah. And she would hate for me to do something, and I'm staring at it and I'm saying, man, I hate this color. And I'm going to have to spend another $10,000 to $12,000 to wrap it in plastic. She would turn to me and say, "You had every opportunity to do it from the start. Why didn't you do it?" And it would be the same thing for carbon ceramic brakes. It'd be the same thing for bucket seats. Whatever the case is. She said, "I gave you. That's kind of where the wifeness will come in. Yeah. I gave you full latitude, and you didn't do it.
I told you so.
I told you so, and now you're unhappy. So get it right.
I should say Kim says the same thing.
Right.
My wife says the same thing to me as well. If you're going to spend that kind of money, do it right. Be patient. But I'm impatient.
Right. Mm-hmm. And for me, I think all of this stuff, to kind of wrap things, my feelings towards this is, whether you think Porsche is a group of elitist owners and an elitist company or whatever, I think it's different. I think it's a special group of owners that have been lucky enough to position themselves in a very special company with, for whatever reason, it's a part of that corporate DNA or that Porsche DNA that we are not going to be a mass-produced car company. We've got cars that we're going to mass-produce to help the
overall average.
Keep the lights on, the doors open.
That's right. And that's sort of how they're going to pay their debt to the world. So if you really need to put a Porsche in the driveway, there's a car you can do it. But those special cars like the 911 and the GT cars and all that kind of stuff, let's keep going down this path, because I know that, for me, I love having goals to look forward to. I want my son to have those same goals. Mm-hmm. If he grows up in an era where everybody owns a Porsche because everybody thought it had to be fair to own whatever car you wanted, that's not the level of enthusiasm I want him to grow up in. I want him to work hard for those goals. And for me, at 42, if I have to continue to work hard for another 10 years, working for Eric, to own that 911 GT3 that I want, then you know what, that's going to continue to make me grow as a person and have that ambition, and I'm all about that. I'm not about these participation awards where everybody gets a
car capitalism speech is anti-socialism. Okay.
Yeah, I'm not about I buy a house and there's a Tesla in the front. Everybody's fair and everyone drives the same car, and I still like that individuality, and if it costs me $250,000, well, I just have to set up my life where I can spend it.
All right.
Yeah. Well, that's
okay. So we've narrowed Jeff's search, just 992, but not from someone he knows personally.
He GT3 Touring car.
Faceless car.
Okay.
GT3 Touring.
GT3 Touring.
Oh, that is it. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
There's some on the market right now.
Yes, there are, in colors that I don't particularly like. The closest one was there's a frozen sort of black. One in Toronto on
frozen black.
I think gold wheels.
It's got to be a wrap.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
It's a touring,
but there's a couple of tourings now on the market that's still
399,000.
Whoa, that's not one.
399,000.
There's some that's like 360, 340, but still $100,000 over.
Right. If I'm spending
not $100,000, but like 80 grand because they're PTS colors and all that.
Right. Mm-hmm. And if we're gonna do that, we're gonna do it right.
Yeah.
Ruby Star.
Ooh, yeah.
It's not called Ruby Star, but it's called now Neo.
No. The Ruby Star is a PTS color. Neo is now a special color.
Okay.
It's a variant of Ruby Star.
Okay.
Can't be confused. They're different shades.
Right.
I almost fell into that trap. So shall we wrap up?
Let's bring us home.
Well, there you go, everyone. Buying a Porsche 911 is a milestone. However, it comes with a lot of stress. So you better be ready to dive into it all in, because it's a worthwhile experience. Owning a Porsche 911, I think it's super rewarding for me, having one, driving it, and just enjoying it, even though it doesn't have some of the things I want. So it's not going to be disappointing once you get past that buying hurdle. Any thoughts before?
No, I think just buy it. It's good.
Just
You
buy
won't
it.
regret it.
Yeah, there you go. Well, thank you, Jeff, for joining us today. It was super fun having your perspective. Hopefully you get that GT3 touring.
Yeah, it'll happen one day. I just have to keep hawking this
Yeah.
dev thing gear. Use code SPOON for
Okay.
10% off.
Half a cent for every million views.
That's
of this
right.
Podcast. Yeah, you'll get that.
That's right. By the way, watch episode 1 Car Stories. Modern 911.
Yeah.
Wait, what episode were you? 5?
Episode 4.
4.
Yeah.
Man, I lose track of numbers.
Yeah. That's when they got real good. Episode
They
like
got better
4-ish
and
and
better
up.
each one.
I feel like I want to redo yours.
All right, I'll buy another car.
No, redo it with the 911.
Okay, all right.
911.
Pretend like it's new. Yeah.
Anyways, well, thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed this one. If you did, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you guys all in the next one.